You were speaking about, that time that Duran spent and he came back to Israel. How did Duran get to Moshe Castile then to you?
Um, Moshe Castillo was one of the students, not the first student. I guess he came in the somehow in the middle of the first generation of students, and he was already a black belt in karate and in something like what people would call nowadays Krav Maga, in Dennis Hanover system. Um, Very efficient, very aggressive way of self-defense for the army. Um, and Moshe by nature he's an artist. He's a sculptor. He does sculptures and he's a painter and a very creative person. And I think this he was, on one hand, he was a very crazy aggressive fighter, very brutal at times. And the other hand, he was this genius and the artist and the free spirit and into natural healing and philosophy and all different things. And so we were young, like I don't know, 16, 17, we started training there. So it was like it opened our mind, our heart in such an amazing way because um, back then Doron wasn't teaching that much anymore. I understand that he had a lot of injuries from the time training ninjutsu and from judo. So the whenever he would give, I think twice a year, he came to Germany, gave a seminar, and usually I attended those seminars. It was very nice. He did a lot of Feldenkrais, which is a beautiful movement system, which is very with a lot of adaptive opportunities to ninjutsu, especially. And but he was teaching very slow motion, very soft, because I guess from all the injuries he couldn't do that strong. And I respected it, and I liked him very much, but it was boring to me. Just, when you're young, me and my friends, we were the idiots. So he would, in the end of the lesson, he would ask, "Who wants to do randori, like fighting, and who wants to do Feldenkrais?" So there were 85 people raising their hand for Feldenkrais, and it was like two idiots saying randori. So you lay down, try not to fall asleep. And it took me some time, took me some years to fall in love with Feldenkrais as well, because when you're young, you want different things. There was an interesting thing actually going on that helped me in the more recent years to create different programs to help people to become faster, more efficient, and successful in becoming a black belt and being able to defend themselves and so on. Because I noticed that those students who were always in the dojo in Munich, they were not as good as those people who came from Würzburg, from Bremen, from Berlin, from Hamburg, from all the other cities, who always had to travel to different parts of Germany where he would be teaching seminars or coming to Munich for a weekend. And I understand from Brent de Mobile, who had the same situation, or similar with Stephen Hayes, that the people who had to travel always, that they got better faster, even though they had kind of less training. And I think it's for a few reasons. On one hand, you're more focused because I have now 48 hours, so I try to suck most out of it. Even on the train back home, we used to ride the train like 11 to 13 hours between Hamburg and Munich. It's like 800 kilometers. There were no fast trains back in the days. So what do? You sit in the train, you discuss. So what was the second technique? What we did then, and can you remember? We show we like you even on the way back, you were still training. And then there's one concept Hatsumi Sensei used to speak about in the past that I like very much. It's kind of teaching your student with your back to him, because when those probably even more talented students sometimes in Munich, every mistake they did was corrected immediately, while we were in Hamburg or our friends were in Berlin, showing our students doing things that very likely or very probably weren't as correct as it should have been. Um, the second time you notice, then you have to explain around, then you have to find a way to better it. So you had time to kind of grow into that without being constantly criticized. So there's in a seminar, usually you get more positive affirmation than in a regular lesson, because in a regular lesson you got time to not just to inspire or motivate people, but to train them actually. Turns out that if somebody has self-discipline and some brain, that maybe giving people inspiration and skills and motivation together and time to prove themselves or grow into an art seem to have been more efficient in both continents, in Europe as well as in America. I don't know how you see that, but
I definitely know what you're referring to when you travel and you travel with friends to go to a seminar, and that review time you have on the train, that review time you have on the plane as you're flying back, and you're handwriting your notes and thinking about it. The stuff that I pick up in those seminars is the stuff that stays with me. Seems like it stays with me the longest and at the most, it's the most easy to recall.
I still found recently some old notebooks, where I took notes from when I used to go to a lesson. And it's interesting because of the way Moshe would teach, because back then he didn't speak German that well, so he would always speak in a mixture of English, German, some Hebrew words, some Japanese words. So that's the way we wrote it down. So I have a few friends of mine, one in Berlin and one in he lives in Munich nowadays. They can read my notes and I can read their notes, but nobody else could get anything out of it, because it's like, what's the movie or the book from Umberto Eco, The Name of the Rose, where this crazy one, he speaks 50 languages, just 3 words out of each language. There was the guy with a hunchback.
Yeah.
So I guess it's very much that.
Yeah.
But it's good memories.
Absolutely. So Moshe Castile was probably one of your major influences as a teacher?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At one point, I basically, as I said, I fell in love so much with it, and I dropped out of school for almost a year. And my mom was kind of cool with it. She said, if you next summer, if you restart and give it all, and you finish your abitur, which is, I guess, something like between high school and college in America, in the middle, take the free time you want. So I basically I used to work in a movie theater and laying bricks, and in the meantime, when I was not working, I was traveling 3 times a day, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to Munich. So I had like 11 hours, 12 hours train ride to Munich, 2 hours training, 12 hours back home, sleeping in the train, working, getting to the next train. So and I did this for more than half a year. And when I woke up in the train, I lost track if I'm going or coming from Munich. It was funny times. And then I moved to Munich basically for almost half a year completely. And then Moshe moved to Berlin. This was the time when the wall came down in East Germany, in East Berlin. And he moved to Berlin to try his luck there to give ninjutsu a push in East Germany, or what was then back new all Germany. And I had a girlfriend back in the days in Berlin, so I decided I follow. So for 6 months, I moved to Berlin. We basically trained, hang out every day for half a year. And then the next, 10, 15, 20 years, I used to go, a few times a month, a few times a year. The older you get, of course, the less it gets sometimes. But it was altogether an amazing time, because he is not a trainer. He's a teacher. He's somebody like Steven who really inspires you, and very creative, very free, very non-dogmatic, very intuitive, and he had a way to bring out the best in people in a very interesting ways. And I hear one word from this new generation, with all the woke culture, whatever, that they that I heard back then a few times. He said that he created people, or he was like, or I am like that, or he's like that, very, very unapologetic people. And I said, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't know what to apologize for. But you just do what back then. The relationship from a teacher to a student, the way I experienced it, was very trusting. So I'll give you an idea. There's one concept when he became religious, long before I became religious, that he would speak about, that I think is also very much a good topic for ninjas. It's like giving tzedakah, giving charity to poor people. And I always thought it's like a waste of money. They just spend it on alcohol or whatever. So we were running around in the heart Berlin, you know, in the middle of the city, spreading leaflets for training, me and him, Moshe Castile, and he would give money to almost every beggar he saw. And I said, are you crazy? Why you give them? You know, they spend it on alcohol. He said, yeah, maybe your money they use on alcohol, mine they use on bread. I said, they should get a job. He said, look, he didn't ask for life advice. He asked for money. He's hungry. So he said, if you want something for your creator, maybe you also start being a giver. And that was the end of the conversation, you know. I didn't understand it really. And so I just started giving charity, you know, where, you know, in the beginning, you know, I was young, I didn't have money. So we had a funny incident that there was a beggar on the street, and I was vegetarian for like 7 years. I was the first generation before it became hip. And I had these tofu sausages, and I had no money on me. So I gave him the package of tofu sausages, and I didn't walk like, I don't know, 5 meters, and all of a sudden, bang, something hit me in the back of my head. So I turned around, and the guy yelled at me, said, it isn't even meat, you know? Like, I couldn't be angry. It was so funny. So in the end, you start giving, good things happen to you. And then I thought I learned it. And then fast forward, like, I don't know, 10 years, fast forward, I see him in Munich on the street with his wife and some other guys arguing. So, you know, young and brave and stupid, I run across the street, you know, I want to prove myself. In the end, I understood there was not much fighting going on. It was just like loud arguing. And there were some Israeli backpackers. And they came with what I thought, and I still believe, very fishy story, what they lost the passport and the money, and they need money, and they went to the community and they needed money, and they told him the only one who's probably dumb enough to give the money is Moshe Castile. and he listened to the story, and you know, I stood next to him, and I thought, oh, to me it sounds like not one word is true. And he opened his wallet and he gave each one, like 3 guys, he gave him 200 euro. That's 600 freaking euro. It's wow. A lot of money back in the mid-90s. And at night, I was in his house for dinner, and I was beside myself. I said, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I said, you're an idiot. And he said, listen, you know, one day, one of these kids might have kids by himself, and one of the friends get into trouble, and maybe the story is a bit cheesy, but in the end, cheesy schmeezy, he needed money, you know, and maybe he remembers that once somebody did good to him, and he gonna pass the mitzvah, the good deed, on to another person. And this is how you create leaders and not followers. This is like, you know, you have to understand that sometimes you're just a cock in the wheel. You're part of something. You're not the main role. You're not the main character in a movie right now. Just play your part, and that's it. And I thought, wow, okay. And I started doing the same. You know, again, it's like, it's either you're a giver or you're taken. It's always more nicer to give than to ask. So this was the way he would teach, you know, by example, by this was his way of leadership.
So speaking of teaching and examples, you know, you have a school that you started in Germany, the Ninjutsu Academy. Could you tell us a little bit about that, and then the evolution of what was your teaching style? What was your emphasis in the schools that you built? You said at one point you had 600 students in there, so obviously you were doing something right.
Yes, I don't have the school anymore. I mean, there's people still using my name or my logo. When I moved to Israel, I gave it all away, because at one point I felt I was like my own cleaning woman, my own manager, my own marketing machine, my own everything, and I got tired of it. And I felt that I still love ninjutsu, but I lost the love for teaching, because it became too much a business and not enough art or love. And I wanted to regain that feeling, and I got it back now, but I had to disengage from it for a certain reason. And I think I went through different stages. Like in the beginning, when you're young and you're teaching, you have to kind of find yourself. So at one point, I realized, like when you know, when all the tough guys come by from the other schools, or you know, whoever had a name back in the city, and they wanted to see if it works what you do, if you are nice and friendly with them, they speak bad about you. If you beat them up, they speak better about you. So I thought, you might as well just beat them up, and so they speak bad about you anyway. But then at one point you get tired of that approach, and you understand that not so many students come from that. I mean, you have good students or tough students, but just not many. And it was always the motivation. How can I help more people achieve at least somehow what it or how it helped me in my life? Because when you do something that you really love, that you really cherish, that you believe, and this is something that there's some dojos around the world that I coach them and I help them to become more successful and get more students, and how to teach an introductory lesson, and how to not lose yourself in the process of selling. Don't become a salesperson, but find a structure that is more attractive for more people, in a better way, without losing yourself. I realized that there's one question that everybody, and also I, had to ask myself: if you really like what you do, if it helped you to, you got in a fight, you survived, you could help other people who were in danger, you could teach other people to help other people themselves who didn't have much self-confidence or self-love or a lack of emotional regulation, you become healthier, you become stronger and better. And just in the end, the stronger you are, usually the more mild, the more forgiving, the more gentle you become. So if it's something that beautiful, if it's something that good, if you really believe that, share it with as many people as possible. It's like you have a cure for cancer. I said, nah, it's only for the nice ones, What? If it means that much to you, and with no, it's not for everybody. Yes, it is for everybody, and it should be. If you really believe that it's so good, like you play, push it, give it to the, give more opportunities for people to learn that. And then the dojo became more successful once we changed the teaching style and the marketing and everything in a way that it was more geared towards the need of people, and less what people think our art should be. Because nowadays, people cry about if it's Bujinkan or Taijutsu or Budo Taijutsu or Ninjutsu or whatever. Because in the end, like many students of ninjutsus nowadays, they live in a marketing disaster. They do ninjutsu. They feel like they're ninja somehow by philosophy, by mindset, or whatever, but they don't call it ninjutsu. And it's a bit like Bill Clinton. Did you smoke or you just inhale, or you know what I mean? It's like, if you do ninjutsu, just call it that way. Because there's nothing wrong calling it that way. Because if you think about it, there were. I'm not just coaching dojos or people to have more successful and healthier martial arts schools. I'm also coaching companies, like small businesses or startups, or even bigger companies like Airbus or whatever. Like, this is what I'm doing. I use the ninjutsu philosophy, and I help companies in HR sectors, in sales, or in motivational, in anything what you call leadership skills, to become more efficient and more successful. And if you do that, you have to, how you say, you have to give it, all of it. And if you really believe it's so good, you have to, how you say, help people as much as you can, and go as deep into your art as possible. And if you really believe you have a value to give, so give it to as many people as possible.